Before we get started with this episode, I have a few requests. Download the Talk Music Talk app. It is free for iPhone and Android, wherever you get your apps, or you can subscribe on iTunes or Google Play. Once you do, just leave a rating and or review in the store to help spread the word about the podcast. Second, share this episode on social media if you enjoy it. Facebook, Twitter, however you like to do it. It will help spread the word about the podcast. And finally, I am in the process of acquiring advertisers and sponsors, and I need your help. Just take a quick survey on my website at talkmusictalk.com/survey. Should take you 30 seconds or less, and it would be greatly appreciated. And now for today's show. Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Talk Music Talk with Boyce. I am Boyce, and this is my podcast. Thank you so much for listening. This is episode 116. And if this is your first time hearing the podcast, let me tell you that Talk Music Talk is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long-form conversations with people who are connected to music from different genres and backgrounds, singers, singer-songwriters, musicians, music therapists, music journalists. And on episode 116, I had the pleasure of speaking to Tania Leon. She is a Cuban-American composer, conductor, educator, advisor to arts organizations. She was born in Havana and has had a career of endless highlights such as Guggenheim Fellowships, Grammy nominations. She's conducted all over the world. Her compositions have been performed at places like the Kennedy Center, just to name one. She's lectured at Harvard. She was a founding member of the Dance Theatre of Harlem. And she also was the founder of Composers Now, which she talks about in our conversation. And this is all just a hint of her many accomplishments. If you want to know more, you can head on over to TaniaLeon.com, TaniaLeon.com. But this conversation is really about how did she get there. We talk about her early life in Cuba, emigrating to the U.S. in the 60s, how the Dance Theatre of Harlem began. We go beyond the awards and milestones and get to her dream, her early dream. She had a dream, which she talks about, didn't know how it was going to come to fruition, but just by having this dream and taking the steps that felt right to her, big steps, small steps, it just brought the right people and situations onto her path. It really is an inspiring life story from a fascinating and talented individual. The ups, the downs, definitely one of my favorite conversations here on the podcast. We recorded this at the Peer Music Publishers office here in New York City. Some street sounds here and there, but nothing to take away from a wonderful talk, a wonderful conversation. Here it is, without further ado, my interview with Tania Leon on Talk Music Talk. Enjoy. So you're a professor at Brooklyn College, right? Still?
Brooklyn College and the Graduate Center.
Okay, great. And what do you teach there?
Composition.
Okay. Yes. And so if I'm a student in your class, what do you want me to get from your class?
Well, it's not a class. Mm-hmm. It's private composition lessons.
Okay, great.
So I work with composers directly one-to-one.
Okay.
And we discuss what they're writing and we discuss techniques. I try to elicit out of them, what do they want to write in order to provoke some kind of impetus of writing who they are.
Okay.
As opposed to imitating, even when you start, you imitate somebody. It doesn't matter. But at least to start getting their own ideas. Okay. On paper from their own point of view.
And how do you draw that out of somebody? How do you teach them to be more individual?
Well, it's a matter of actually allowing them to say whatever they want to say without imposing personal views or imposing a strict technique approach.
Okay.
Because, the technique is developed sometimes by usually copying other works, like many years ago. For example, I don't know if Beethoven had students, but
if he did.
One of the things that was happening at that time is that there was not such a printing machinery.
Okay.
So therefore, everything was done through copying. So the students of a given composer will copy pencil and paper.
Yeah.
They will copy the work of that composer or the work of composers that composer would suggest.
Okay.
And that's how they understood the workings of technique, style, and even that style is hard to determine, but at least they learn a lot that way. Sometimes I suggest my students to do the same.
Okay.
Because sometimes, the computer might be very good to make practical choices at a given time, but it's much better when you, in my opinion, of course, when you really work with your hands. You're working with material. It's not only something through perception by visuals, but it's by something that is a muscle type of contact.
Because that's what they say, like with note-taking, you learn more, you retain more when you're using manually, you're doing something.
Well, the focus, listening. You are in such a focus in notation that you start understanding the relationship between one note and the other, or the relationship between one passage and another passage. Okay. And it's quite different. Yes.
Is that one of the things, how you learned to get to your style or technique? Someone did that for you?
Well, that is something that I actually proposed to myself when I started studying composition. I got so interested in the works of many, many different composers that just looking at the score was not sufficient to me. Sometimes I would actually copy pages and pages, pencil and paper. Okay. And by that act, I understood a lot of what was going on the page.
What made you get to that, to that point where you I need to do this with my hands?
It was my instinctual.
Okay.
And then reading through history, I started to realize that at the time when all of this technology was not apparent or was not really of access, what was happening before the printing machine. So before then, it was precisely through a lot of writings. Okay. Books were done that way. You see. So that's why people look for manuscripts, because the secret or the seeds of a good book is in the manuscript of the writer.
And you started playing piano at 4, right?
Yes.
First instrument. What was that? A parental decision?
It was my grandmother's decision. Okay. Yeah, she observed that I was very enamored of music, and according to the story, I used to sing, I used to dance. When I sing, I was singing exactly in the same pitches. Okay. And I had a tremendous amount of retainment. I would retain a melody. Okay. And sing it and enjoy myself. It was sort of like a real joy that she saw that I exhibited at that time. So it was her idea, and she took me to a conservatory and convinced the teachers to start teaching me, because at that time the teachers said that it was impossible to teach me because I was not even in kindergarten. But my grandmother was very, I don't know,
persuasive.
More than persuasive.
So, how old was everyone else? How old were they?
In the conservatory? Yeah. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't remember. I have a picture, though, of sort of like the kindergarten of music, in which I received my first diploma at age 5. Okay. And in that picture, there's other children also receiving their diplomas.
Do you remember enjoying it at 4 or that early, the piano? Or?
No, the only thing that I remember out of that era is the day that I played my first concert. Okay. I was part of a whole recital of many students, of course. And then I played my first piece. And what I remember is my grandmother running with this bouquet of flowers to the stage. Which bouquet of flowers I still have. It's pressed in a pictures book, inside a plastic. Okay. So, I mean, you can imagine what is left.
So when did you become conscious of, like, I'm enjoying this piano, doing this music?
I don't know. I continued studying and memorizing pieces and doing well in the exams from one year to the other. Little that I know. I mean, I was playing big pieces and all the repertoire of indicative of somebody that will become a concert pianist.
Okay.
And then I started winning competitions.
And that was going to be the dream, is to be a concert pianist?
Exactly,
okay.
Yes. I mean, my dream was to concertize all over the world. Because apparently at a very early age, I started thinking big.
Okay, that's good.
I live in an island. I was talking about concertizing all over the world, you know?
Yes. Was that just instinctive, or was there somebody like you were looking up to?
Well, I mean, I was reading all of these stories of the different musicians of the world, and I was reading them. They were, you know, they were here, they were there, they were in Paris, there was in Madrid, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know. By the time I was 9 years old, that I received a card from my teacher that when he was a harpsichordist.
Okay.
And he went to give a recital in Paris, and he sent me the Eiffel Tower card, and that was it. That was it. I told my family, this is where I'm going to live.
Yeah. Did you know how you were going to get there? Like,
no, I was a dreamer.
Yeah, but you just figured the music would take you.
No, neither. You know, I mean, I would declare these things in my family, and they would look at me like, this girl is not in her right mind.
But I love that. It's like when people, you're not sure how, but once you plant the seed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was traveling, and I used to do the laundry. You know, I mean, we would do the laundry by hand also. And I would be singing in different languages. My grandmother would say, "What are you singing?" I said, "It's another language." Languages that I would create. Yeah. You know, because, you know.
That's what kids do. Yes. Dreamer kids do.
Exactly, yeah.
When did you start composing?
Well, let me tell you, my brother, which is a pianist, he started studying the violin, and then he dropped the violin. Okay. He had what we could say a combo, which was an ensemble. He was very entrepreneurial, and he would put these musicians together to create like little ensemble, mixed ensemble, 4 or 5 musicians. Okay. And the rehearsals were in the house. You know, and so he started creating, you know, sometimes things that needed words. So we would do songs. Okay. I did a lot of songs with my brother to sing with him, you know, as a duet. And those are my first, you know, composition gestures. Okay. Even that was nothing that, you know, that's the same for my brother and his group. Okay. You know? And we will sing them, and the people in the building where I live, you know, learn some of them. And but it was sort of like an entertainment and a passing phase as we were in the early stages of teenage time. Okay. You know, so that's about it. Okay. But before I migrated to the United States, one of my songs was picked up. Okay. By a real singer. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. What was the song? You remember the title? It was called Ciego Reto, and it was sung by Elena Burke, which was a big name at the time. She heard the piece. Don't ask me how she heard it, but she heard the song, and she liked it, and she actually sang in one of her recitals. And then there was another one also, Daisy Ortega. She did also a song of mine. Did you get to see them perform it? Yes, I was there. Okay, how was that like, hearing something that you created? I was not into it. In other words, that perhaps pointed out that I would become a composer. Okay. Yet, I was not into it. that was a song. Oh, somebody sang my song, and that was a big deal.
Yeah.
But the one that actually said that I would become a composer was my piano teacher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the piano teacher that went to Paris, because I had a teacher first, that actually groomed me throughout all those years of studies at the conservatory, and her name was Doro. We would call her Doro,
okay.
But this teacher, Edmundo Lopez, is the one that when he said that when he heard that I was going to migrate, he said, we are losing a pianist, but we might gain a composer.
Okay.
I don't know why he said that.
Mm-hmm. So he saw something in you before you saw it in yourself.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Did you just sort of pack that away and?
No. I heard that, but it didn't ring a bell.
Okay.
He was a critic, and he reviewed a concert that I did, sort of like a graduation concert, where the clarinetist was Paquito de Rivera, and I was the pianist.
Okay.
So we were sort of excelling as soloists in our instruments, you see? Mm-hmm. And we did this recital, and he wrote the recital, the review of the recital, and he mentioned also in that review that he had the premonition that we were going to be, some artistic names, in the communities of the future, you see. But then I left Cuba.
Yeah.
And
for school? Did you go for school?
Well, I left, in pursuit of going to Paris.
Okay.
My dream. I wanted to go to Paris. I wanted to go to Paris, and I wanted to study there at the conservatory.
Yeah.
And I had also heard about Nadia Boulanger, this woman that was teaching. It's a living legend. And she was teaching, and she was an expert in one of the things that I had a degree on, which is solfege, which is something that I adore.
Okay.
You see? And I heard that she would do everything through solfege.
Okay. Now, what is that?
Solfege is sort of like a way of reciting the pitches that you have in a score.
Okay.
But you can recite them, or you can sight singing.
Okay.
Sing those. So in other words, as you are reading the pitches, you are also singing the sound of the pitches.
Okay.
And that is something that was my schooling from the time I was 4 years old. Yeah. So for me, it was a language that I knew very well, and that I could actually read and sight sing. It doesn't matter in what tempo.
Yeah.
You see? So hearing of Nadia Boulanger, I wanted to go to Paris and continue my studies as a pianist, and also do any kind of grado or postgrad with her in solfege, which was one of my expertise, and I have a degree in solfege, by the way, So therefore, that's how I arrived in the United States. And the reason why I arrived in the United States is because that was the only way that I could fly out of Cuba. It was a moment where the government declared that those that wanted to go out of the country should do it. Okay. And I grabbed onto the opportunity. And the opportunity came about thanks to an application that a colleague from the conservatory and her family sent me from Florida. Okay. And that was actually applications given by the Catholic Association or the Catholic Church. And I filled that form. And went through all the process that you had to go in Cuba in terms of declaring that you wanted to leave. Yeah. And the form would actually declare that you will have a sponsor. So that family became my sponsor, plus the church.
Okay.
And the thing is that in Cuba, at the time, everybody was raised Catholic. So I was Catholic.
Okay, so
you see, fit. So that was a way also, to be able to fill the form. And I'm telling you, 3 years after, I was notified that there was a flight with a seat.
With your name on it.
With my name on it. My family was hysterical. No one believed that this was going to happen. Yeah. And the only person that really was not afraid of my dreams was my mother. That she told the entire family, if that is what she wants to pursue, let her do it. And I said, look, I'm going to go, and if it doesn't work out, I'll come back.
Yeah.
You see?
Why not?
So that was my what I declare at home. But things changed dramatically by the time I arrived in the United States, I realized I was not permitted to go back.
Oh, okay.
Because that was part of the regulation at that time between the two countries.
Okay.
And so I said, well, okay, so I'm going to continue to Paris. But I couldn't continue to Paris either because, based on the papers, when you arrived at that time, I didn't have, I was not a citizen of the United States. I was actually put into a list of the people called parole.
Okay.
You see? And I was told by the authorities that I will have to wait at least 5 years.
Oh, really? Okay.
Before I could apply for citizenship, and then I could actually, have all the freedom to go anywhere.
Okay.
You see? So, based on that, I didn't want to stay in Florida. It was Miami where I landed. And by the third day of my arrival, I was in New York. Because I went to the church, and I said, look, I'm a musician. At that time in Miami, there was no life in terms of this type of pursuit. And they understood, and they gave me a one-way ticket to New York.
Were you scared at all during this period?
Oh, my dear, let me tell you. First of all, I was a very shy person and very scared. Okay. Very scared because, from the moment that minutes or minutes before I boarded the plane, that the drama of realizing that I couldn't go back started. Yeah. By the time I arrived in Miami, I was in state of panic. You see?
Yeah.
Complete panic. To the point that the family, that sponsored me, the husband of my friend said, I have a job for you. You are an accountant, and you can do a cashier's job without speaking English, And that night, I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I just went to the room that they provide me with, and I just look at the stars. I started telling myself, how do I tell my family I cannot come back? You see, what am I going to do? It was like, I have no idea. Yeah. Plus, I was so young, and so I was not savvy enough because I have been very protected by my family and very secluded. And here I was in the United States.
And can't go back.
And I couldn't go back. I didn't speak English. I didn't know the people. it was something else. Something else. But I had some friends here in New York and a couple, Sarita and Fernando, which Sarita is still alive, and she called me only 2 days ago. She lives in Florida now. And I called them and said, I'm going to New York because, I think that music is better to be developed there than here. And apparently I have to stay here 5 years. And they say, come on up. We have a sofa for you. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I end up at Grand Concourse and 180th.
Okay.
In the apartment of Sarita and Fernando. Mm-hmm. And that was my beginning here.
Okay. Were you working a day job also and doing the music? Or?
No. I mean, the first thing that I did, let me say this, this is very, very interesting because with Sarita, we started talking about Sarita, by the way, she was a music copyist.
Okay.
And she have copied my music in Cuba. Okay. You see?
Yeah.
So those little songs and things like that, Sarita was the one that would copy, for presentation. And the thing is that we started talking, what am I going to do? I don't know anybody, where I'm going to begin. Mm-hmm. And you know what we did? What? We took the yellow pages, the telephone book. Oh, you have no idea. We took the yellow pages and we started going through the yellow pages looking for professionals, professional. And we bumped into the American Council for the emigrees in the profession. Mm-hmm. Professional emigrees, Yeah. And I went to that office, which was by the United Nations. And I explained myself. There were people there that spoke Spanish. Okay. So, because it was an international situation. And there was a woman, that Mrs. Butch, that I believe she was Hungarian, and she was in charge of the music division. Okay. And she said to me, there's a piano there. Why didn't you play the piano? She wanted to know that what I was saying was true.
You didn't just stumble off the street.
So, of course, I just came, I was prepared. Yeah. I have my fingers, I've been playing until the last day that I left. And when I finished playing, and she said, I'm going to get you a scholarship. Okay. Mm. So she gave me a place to practice, which was actually on West End and 72nd Street. I remember. Yeah. Don't tell me what building it was, but I know that it was in that block. And to prepare myself for the audition. Yeah. And finally, when I did the audition at a place called New York College of Music, which was on 85th between Lexington and Park. Okay. I went and did the audition. I finished the audition. Yeah. And within minutes, they told me I had a scholarship. It was, it was so... And that they could not validate my degree right away because I didn't know English. Yeah. And that I had to validate everything. So redo everything. Mm-hmm. Redo my bachelor, redo my master, you see. Yeah. And so that's how I end up at NYU, learning English and
did it take you a long time? Sorry.
Yeah.
Did it take you a long time to pick up English?
Yeah. Well, I didn't graduate from my first, from the bachelor until 1971. Okay. Yeah.
So you were working. God. But that must have seemed at least promising to get the scholarship to have things work out.
Not only that, in a conservatory with all these other, students, I remember in the first semester they already sent me to NPR. Okay. And I actually did a recital on NPR, and they gave me a vinyl. Yeah. I have a vinyl with a recording of what I played. Yeah. And nice. Yes, and then I did several appearances with the orchestra of the college, and then at NYU, and so it was like very, very interesting. What happens is that everything suddenly changed for me because within the year of my arrival, I went and I replaced a classmate of mine playing the piano in a church in Harlem. Okay. It was the first time I took the D train to Harlem. I was very excited because history, and hearing so much about Harlem and never being in Harlem, So I went there and I went to the church of, the church where Harlem School of the Arts was. And the founder, Dorothy Maynard, the singer, was the one that received me.
Okay.
I didn't know who she was. I thought that she was impressive, her physicality, her presence, but I didn't know who this woman was. And then I went and I played for a woman that also was an immigrant from Europe, and she was teaching. So her English was not so, so big. I mean, in terms of the vocabulary, mine was none. So we're talking about a year within my arrival, and I am already, in this situation with NYU. And so that's the day that also coincidental, but I mean, I don't know if there are coincidences. Yeah. It's a very strange coincidence, everything that has happened to me up to now, you see. And it's mysterious. And that was the same day that Arthur Mitchell went to the same place and heard me play the piano in one of the moments that he crossed the room where I was by myself waiting for the next, lesson to play to. And I was enjoying that baby grand piano because I didn't have one. So he came to me and approached me and talked to me, partly English, partly Italian. Partly Spanish, partly Italian. We laugh a lot because he was trying to communicate with me, So what? But he had such a smile and he had such a charisma that I was intrigued about who is this man. So he asked me for a telephone, and he called me in 2 weeks, and he told me if I could go to the same place. Yeah. And to play for him for his lessons. And when I got there, he told me not to bring those books. No, just play whatever you want. Follow me. So that was the instructions. Okay. And that, I didn't know that my life was changing at that moment because, he talked to me about a project that he had in mind. That project became the Dance Theatre of Harlem. Okay. And I became the music director, the pianist, music director, the conductor, the head of the School of Music, everything, the founder of the orchestra, everything, so those are basically my first 10 to 12 years in the United States.
How long did that start, after that first day you met him?
A couple of weeks.
Oh, okay. So you were moving along.
Well, it's being at the right place at the right time, Yeah. But, coincidentally that I would go to replace a friend. Yeah. That was not my job. I went to replace her because she was sick and she didn't want to lose the job. Yeah. So she sent me there. And that he would listen to whatever I was playing by myself in that room and that he would come back and approach me about becoming his pianist.
It's divine.
And he told me about this project and, and the first lesson was only 4 dancers and me. 4 women dancers and me. One of those dancers is today the one that is leading the Dance Theatre of Harlem, which is Virginia Johnson. You see? So I didn't know that I was stepping into the doors of history, that I was going to be meeting all these people that I didn't know existed. Yet there are 2 people that my grandmother talked to me about. Yeah. No, actually 3. Okay. She talked to me about Marian Anderson. She talked to me about Josephine Baker. Okay. And she talked to me about Paul Robeson. You see? Yeah. I was not sure what she was actually portraying in terms of talking to me about these role models, you see. But later on, I got it. Yeah. I got it because, she was actually sort of making me aware of very successful artists of color, you see. Yeah. Even that at home, that was not a taboo. Okay. Because at home, we had 3 different races. That's the components of my family, you see. So, and that was not a a point of discussion. You know, we were raised with everybody included, you know, and if I go out with my grandfather, you know, I mean, I was his granddaughter, you know? I mean, even there are looks, you know, I mean, I'm a mix of all of them, but you see? And the thing is that I got it when I started actually working with the Dance Theatre of Harlem, which Arthur wanted to demonstrate that dancers of color could dance ballet. And I got to meet the people that came to support that idea because they believe and have actually worked on the idea. I mean, one of the first ones was George Balanchine, because I mean, Arthur Mitchell was one of his soloists. You see, so he came to instruct us, to give us insight about the ballets that we were actually putting into the program, into the repertoire, you know. And I found myself sitting with George Balanchine, teaching me Concerto Barroco, which is actually based on a double violin concerto by Johann Sebastian Bach. And not only that, not only that he was teaching me in terms of what to look for in the movement, and a movement that was actually in sync with the music. You see? But I realized he was an extraordinary musician. So he had been trained as a musician too.
So he understood.
So therefore, I mean, the way that he was actually the conversation in his choreography with the music itself was like one was actually intertwined with the other. And that was wonderful for me to understand that. And then, I mean, another choreographer that I worked very close or who worked very closely with me was Jerome Robbins. Also, you know, teaching me all the ballets, specifically ballets that also he had set for Arthur Mitchell, because Arthur started to actually infuse the repertoire with some of the ballets that he himself had been a soloist, you know. So that one of those ballets were the Afternoon of the Faun, for example. And to this day, I remember Jerome Robbins, you know, I mean, how poetically he expressed what I had to look for in the movement in order to be able to make the music. The movement, and the movement will become the music. I mean, you know, I mean, I learned so much. I mean, and I was learning with people that were masters that I didn't know they were. Because when I was introduced to Balanchine, I said, "Who's Balanchine?" You know. And then I went to Lincoln Center, and I saw Arthur Mitchell dancing. Because he was dancing the first years of the creation of Dance Theatre of Harlem. He was still dancing. You see. So we would go there and see him dancing, and met the other dancers of the time, and started working with Tania Leclerc, which actually was married to Balanchine when she was dancing. And so I mean, and what I say that is a mystery to me is that those names that my grandmother mentioned to me, they became people in front of me at a given time. Because one of the pieces that I wrote called Spiritual Suite, you know, and we premiered in Philadelphia, the narrator of that piece was Marian Anderson. So there I was, dealing with Marian Anderson, and it's like boom, and you know, Marian Anderson, you know,
I know you.
You know, my grandmother talked to me about this woman, you see, and then I found out that she was the first person of color to sing the national anthem. I mean, you know, I mean, I'm telling you, it was very strange. Same thing, we went and we did a big performance at the Apollo Theatre in London. And who were we working with? no other than Josephine Baker.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like very strange coincidences in my life.
Yeah. More than coincidence.
More than coincidences. Yeah. Because, I mean, there's a ballet, he was no longer around, but Arthur did a ballet, dedicated to Paul Robeson. And I had to write music for that ballet.
Okay.
So, I mean...
that completed...
I mean, it's like strange, in my personal life, of course. And unfortunately, my grandmother, in the physical realm, she was not able to know that this was happening because she died 4 years before all of this happening. Yeah. 4 years after my arrival in the United States, she died.
Okay, because you still couldn't go back.
I couldn't go back. Yeah. I couldn't go back. I couldn't go to her funeral. I was prevented.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah. That was how severe the regulations were at that time. That people love family members on both sides of the of the sea, and we could not be present.
Yeah.
But spiritually speaking, I mean, I would like to confess that I have some kind of inkling towards the life of spirits. Yeah. So I mean, I think that spiritually, if she has witnessed all this.
Yeah, yeah.
And she probably was smiling from ear to ear when she saw me dealing with Marian Anderson.
Like she was there. She was like, I told you.
I told you so. And it's not a fantasy. I have the pictures. Yeah. So every time I see the pictures, this revelation comes back. It's like, oh my God, I mean, it's a tremendous situation. So I mean, that's how my beginning happened, in the United States. Working with the Dance Theatre of Harlem, then working with the Brooklyn Philharmonic, working with the American Composers Orchestra, working with the New York Philharmonic, and
did you get to Paris?
Yes.
When did you get to Paris?
We went to Paris. Dance Theatre of Harlem. Okay. I went to Paris. Of course, I've been there many times as a tourist, but I'm never a tourist there because, I mean, I'm sort of like a student of culture when I go there. So, I mean, I go crazy in the music stores with all the scores. I mean, I go to the Eiffel Tower. I touch the Eiffel Tower. It's the same one as the picture. I have many pictures with Eiffel Tower. And my friends that know my story, they send me cards of the Eiffel Tower. The last one that I received is a friend that was there just a month ago and sent me a beautiful card that is painted in wood. But it's very thin wood to the point that she can put it. She was able to place that in an envelope and send it to me. I was so touched. You have no idea.
That's beautiful.
And I have my Eiffel Tower T-shirts. So therefore, but no, we went, I mean, Dance Theatre of Harlem, we went there and with these seasons there, and I conducted the seasons, at Le Châtelet. That was a theater. And by the saying, I mean, and it has been really, and my love for Paris completely is there. It hasn't diminished. I remember when I was 20 years in this country, I actually took my credit card and I booked my flight to Paris, and I sat in front of the tower saying, how come I didn't make it here? I'm not living here. Trying to figure out what happened. But so that's basically.
That's wonderful. So when did Composers Now start? That was 2010?
Well, yes. Composers Now is actually a compilation of all of these moments in the world of composition. You have to understand that by virtue of being at Dance Theatre of Harlem and Arturo Mitchell having the desire to have new pieces created for the company. Mm-hmm. In that case, what he was doing, not only me writing the first piece that was actually written by the resident composer, because I became a composer there.
Okay.
He told me, why don't you write a piece? I'm going to do the choreography, And I said, me writing a ballet? Yeah, write a ballet. Yeah. I said, okay.
Why not?
I never said no to anything. Mm-hmm. Specifically when you have mentors like that, that believe in you, I mean, you're not going to pull back, to the contrary, And so after that, he started inviting composers, seasoned composers, to come and to create ballets for Dance Theatre of Harlem. And that's how I met Marlos Nobre and Coleridge Taylor Perkinson, and, and from then on and on and on and on. So from there, when I actually went to New York to sort of like become a full-fledged musician, not only the music director of Dance Theatre of Harlem, I started sort of like also getting into the community of composers, and I met a great man. His name was John Duffy. Okay. And John Duffy created Meet the Composer. Mm-hmm. And he invited me to be a member of the board of Meet the Composer. So there I was sitting with Steve Reich, and from that point of view, I mean, not only a composer of a specific genre of music, but Max Roach, for example, so Steve Reich and Max Roach is two different genres, at least, that they produce in music. And so the entire table was full of composers of different genres, and composers that for me were like, I was the little one in the community, you see. And Mule Richard Abrams, that's how I met Mule. And anyway, so that was a project that I really, really loved. And I started thinking lately, at least, of the advent of the century, that I wanted to do something that will be inclusive, that will include all of these composers that I adore and respected, but that in a way they were representing different avenues of the world of composition. But I thought that all of those avenues were valid, and that there was no reason why we would only would look at this, expertise, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But in my world, since the 1980 that my father died, that's when I started looking at myself as far as all of the things that I know and have inherited, not only from my upbringing and my native culture, but all the cultures that have touched me. And I'm not talking about only countries. I'm talking about cultural techniques in music, traces of influences of the composers. I mean, all of that have created my language, you see. Yeah. And so therefore, I started to look at very, very consciously and focus into the language of all of these composers, you see. Yeah. And for example, now I'm very happy that the conservatories of the nation are embracing jazz, and they have departments of jazz, and jazz is one of the recognized cultures, that have been created in the United States. And so therefore, I mean, for me, my encounter with jazz was like, oh my God, you see? So therefore, this is something that I wanted to do, and that was what inspired me to create Composers Now. Okay. Because it addresses and includes composers of all walks of sound, and includes composers from emerging composers to super senior composers. Okay. You see, because the super seniors are mentors of the emerging ones, and the emerging ones are coming in with their fast and furious ideas. You see, and that conversation between the two camps, including the mid-career composer. I mean, it's very important.
Yeah, and they're all learning.
Yes, we all exactly. Yes. So that and it's happening here in New York. In fact, right now the festival, Composers Now Festival, is actually running, and it lasts for the entire month of February. And we were really honored with the fact that Mayor de Blasio gave us a proclamation on the 1st of February, and he declared the 1st of February Composers Now Festival Day.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
But that is what is behind this. I mean, it's not, it's what I would say my legacy to the city that embraced me when I came in, and I was so scared and so shy. Yeah. It gave me plenty of opportunities. You know, I would not be a founding member of Dance Theatre of Harlem without that moment that I described to you, and it happened in New York. It didn't happen in Havana. You see. So I mean, so that is what I want to actually make sure that perhaps this could be my legacy to New York City, because I'm a New Yorker in a way, you know. And in November, I was invited to conduct and actually introduce my music in Cuba for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yes, and that was so incredible. You know, I conducted the same orchestra I used to listen to when I was growing up in the conservatory. Yeah. And that moment was very tremendous. And one of the things that really touched me profoundly is that the article that appeared in the newspaper in Cuba about my concert is the first time that Cuba acknowledged that I was Cuban American. Okay. So in other words, I mean, it's like my native land was calling me back, you know, but it acknowledged my growth over here, you see.
Like all of you.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it was like putting myself together for the first time. Okay. So it was very important. And the rest of the family that is alive, you know, which is actually... My ancestors, all of them are gone because my mother died 2 years and a half ago. So, I mean, it's the new generation that is there. All of them, they were in the theater, and they were so proud, and, you know.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. It was a very incredible moment. You know, they were there, the physical rest of the family, and I'm pretty sure that all my ghosts were there too.
All your angels. Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks to you.
Thank you.
That had the idea and have pursued a moment for us to be able to speak to a show.
Sure. I'm glad I did.
Yes. Okay.
Tania Leon on Talk Music Talk. A wonderful conversation from a wonderful person. Again, her website is tanialeon.com. Also visit composersnow.org for more information on her organization. I am online several places, several ways. TalkMusicTalk.com for more podcast information. Thisisvoice.com, my personal website where you can find out about my novels and my music. I am also on Twitter and Instagram at thisisvoice. Voice is spelled B-O-I-C-E. Don't forget to download the TMT app. It is free for iPhone and Android, wherever you get your apps, or you can subscribe to the podcast on Google Play or iTunes. And if you are on iTunes, it is especially helpful if you leave a rating and or review in the store to help spread the word and get people talking about Talk Music Talk. You can also find the podcast on Stitcher, TuneIn, SoundCloud, so go there. On SoundCloud from episode 100 on, we'll be adding more in the future. And I have a back catalog suggestion for you. Episode number 20, keeping with the theme of great Cuban artists, are Juan Ortiz, pianist, jazz music, experimental music. He can do it all with ease. A fascinating story also about his journey from Cuba to the States. And also you'll get to hear some of his music in the episode. That's episode number 20 with Arwan Ortiz. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Till next time, and there will be a next time. This one's for you, Liz.